Hey guys, welcome back. So this is going to be our last lesson studying the topic of migration. The next things we're going to do after this is start working on actually making our own animation so we can make an animated movie that we can show in the movie theater. We're a little behind on that. I was hoping to get the animation camera way back in like September. Now it's almost December. And so, or if you might be watching this in December, it might be December. And that's a little later than we wanted, but we will do it. We're going to make our animation. We're going to get it showing in the movie theater. But we still have one more migrating animal to study, and one more big cutting project to do, and one more undulating spiral line to install in the hallway, in our last house color. Have you noticed they're in the house colors? They're in the house colors. And then it'll be time to start thinking about how to get the animation done. So that's exciting, and a little daunting because we have a lot of work to do still. So we're going to study one more migrating animal today, and we're going to study one more artist whose work is all about lots of something. We've been studying these artists who do work with a lot of something to help us sort of make that connection to migration, because millions and millions and millions of creatures migrate, sometimes all at the same time. Sometimes it's very impressive looking. And so we have an artist today who, oh my gosh, she is really interested in a lot of something, as you will see. But first, let's talk about this one more migrating animal, and it's, any guesses? People. It's people. People are the last migrating animal we need to study, because people move all around the world too. A lot of us stay in our homes or live in the same city our whole lives, but some of us move to faraway places like animals do. And some of us, and there are times in history where that has happened a bunch. And in the United States, our country, the United States, is actually quite famous for being a country that a lot of people migrate to. The word we use when it's people isn't migrate, it's usually immigrate. You immigrate when you move to another country. It's called immigration. And there was a time period in the history of the United States where a lot of people immigrated to the United States. It kind of made our country famous for being a destination for immigration for people from other countries. It still is. There are still a lot of people who want to live in the United States and move to the United States. But there was a particular time in history where it was happening a lot. And that's the book we're going to read about today. The book is called Ellis Island. It's about an island close to New York City that many, many people passed through when they immigrated to the United States. So this book is both about the island and the place, and about how people immigrated to the United States. So let's go ahead and read it. Ellis Island. And there you can see a picture of New York City in the background and a picture of Ellis Island in the foreground of that picture there. And here we have the table of contents on the left side of this page. It asks the question, what do you know about Ellis Island? And there's an old picture of Ellis Island, a black and white picture of Ellis Island. And then above the table of contents, you can see another picture of Ellis Island. And the table of contents here, the first part says, what is immigration, on page 2? What is Ellis Island, on page 6? What happened to Ellis Island, on page 10? And what can you learn at the Ellis Island Immigration Museum, on page 14? So let's find out. What is immigration? People come from all over the world to live in the United States of America. It's a country built by immigration, which means moving one's home from one country to another. People move to new countries for many reasons. Often they're looking for a better life and hoping for more chances to find work. Many people come to join family members. Others come in search of more freedom. And look at this ship. You can see these people are all on a boat heading to the United States, and there's another boat you can see in the background there. That looks like a pretty crowded boat. And then this little box with the golden border here says, in their words. So these are the words of an immigrant who came to the United States. It says, we heard this was a good new country where you had the opportunity to better yourself. And that was a man named Lyle Small, who was an immigrant from Barbados in 1921, just over 100 years ago. he immigrated to the United States. The biggest wave of immigration to America was from about 1880 to 1930. And again, that's about 150 to 100 years ago. More than 26 million people moved to America during this time. That's a lot of people, 26 million people, all immigrating to the United States. And then there's a table down here that says, who came to America? It says immigrants came to America during this time from all over the world, but most came from Southern and Eastern Europe. And you can see they're listing different countries there and how many immigrants came from each country. The country with the most was Italy, where 4,600,000 people came from Italy. And then below that, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, 4 million people came. From the Russian Empire, 3,300,000 people came. From Germany, 2,800,000 people came. From Britain, 2,300,000 people came. From Canada, 2,300,000 people came. From Ireland, 1,700,000 people came. And from Sweden, 1,100,000 people came. Most immigrants at that time traveled to America by boat. Not the folks from Canada, but everyone else. Some traveled with their families. Some were adults or children traveling on their own. The trip to America was often very difficult. The folks in that picture don't look like they're having a very good time on the trip to America. They look, for one thing, they're just sitting on the deck of the boat. They don't seem to have a room on the boat or a particular place that's like their spot on the boat. They're just hanging out on the deck. For a weeks-long journey to America, that could be a little rough. In the little box, the In Their Words box, it says, well, we got on the boat and we went steerage. Steerage meant a horrible experience, but to me as a youngster, it was fun. We slept in double-decker beds, and the food was not good. That's Lawrence Meinwald, an immigrant from Poland in 1920. What is Ellis Island? From 1892 to 1954, the first stop in America for many immigrants was Ellis Island. This small island in New York Harbor was set up as an immigration station. More than 12 million immigrants passed through Ellis Island when they arrived in America. And there's a picture of Ellis Island. The Statue of Liberty. Ellis Island is next to Liberty Island, home of the Statue of Liberty. Lady Liberty greeted the people who arrived in America at Ellis Island. Look at those people, they're like waving to the Statue of Liberty. That was a very important symbol for people coming to the United States when they saw the Statue of Liberty. They're like, we made it, we're here. The name of every person coming into the country was recorded at Ellis Island. The immigrants were also interviewed and given medical exams. These immigrants were being examined for disease. If an immigrant was sick, he was often held at Ellis Island until he was better, or he was sent back to his home country. Can you imagine traveling all the way to the United States by boat, getting here, and then you're sick and they send you back to your home country instead of getting to stay in the United States? Oh, that would be so hard. What happened to Ellis Island? The immigration station at Ellis Island was closed in 1954. For years, its buildings were not used and everything fell into disrepair. Some people worried that an important piece of American heritage would be lost forever. They worked to find a way to turn the old immigration station into a museum. Turning Ellis Island into a museum was an enormous restoration project. Restoring the main building took 8 years and cost $156 million to complete. Did you know about 40% of Americans today have an ancestor who passed through Ellis Island? That's amazing. So many people who live here in the United States have a grandmother or a grandfather or a great-grandmother or a great-grandfather who passed through Ellis Island when they came to the United States. Part of the job was to put together the exhibits. The museum staff wanted the exhibits to show what immigrants experienced on their journey to America. They also wanted the exhibits to show what life was like for immigrants once they arrived in America. To build the exhibits, the museum staff collected items that were used when the immigration station was open. Museum staff and volunteers interviewed immigrants who came through Ellis Island about their experiences. Many immigrants gave personal belongings to the museum that they brought with them on their journey to America. And in their words box it says, what did we take with us? Our clothes, our pillows, our big thick comforters made from pure goose feathers, not chicken feathers, and a barrel of pickles. That's Fanny Szuk, an immigrant from Poland, 1921. That's all the things they had. Their clothes, stuff for their bed, and a barrel of pickles. What can you learn at the Ellis Island Immigration Museum? The Ellis Island Immigration Museum opened in 1990. It's full of artifacts and stories that tell about an important time in America's history. At the museum, you can see immigrants' belongings, read their diaries, and listen to recordings of them telling their stories. The exhibits help visitors understand what it was like to be an immigrant to America. And underneath the words it says, a wall outside the museum lists the names of those who passed through Ellis Island. Think about all those names that must be there. All the millions of people who passed through Ellis Island, and all their names are on that wall. Wow. At the museum, there are hundreds of photographs of people who came to America through Ellis Island. Some pictures were taken before they traveled to America. Others were taken after they were living in America for a while. Underneath the photo it says, a group of hopeful people arrived in America through Ellis Island. Through interviews, letters, and diaries, immigrants have told a lot about their experiences coming to America. They've talked about leaving their homes, choosing what to bring with them, and traveling across the Atlantic Ocean. In their words, it says, the first time I saw the Statue of Liberty, all the people were rushing to the side of the boat. Look at her, and in all these kinds of tongues. There she is, like it was somebody greeting them. That's Elizabeth Phillips, an immigrant from Ireland in 1920. They've told what they were thinking when they first arrived in New York Harbor and saw the Statue of Liberty. They've told how they felt when they were finally living in America. History is the study of what people have done. Looking at artifacts and listening to stories helps us connect to people who lived before us. In their words, it says, getting off on Ellis Island, my mother was dressed up. She'd been making this suit for a year to land in. And I was dressed up with handmade lace and all. That's Aileen Watts James, an immigrant from Panama in 1923. Learning about immigration at Ellis Island helps us see how America was built. It helps us understand the past. Underneath the photo it says, a visitor to the Ellis Island Museum reads the names of immigrants who passed through the immigration station there. All right, it's an amazing story. So many people who traveled quite far and often through very difficult circumstances to come live in the United States. It's another example of migration, except we just call it immigration. All right, well, it's time to talk about one more artist, and the artist we're going to talk about today is named Max Cole. And she is living right here in New Mexico right now. She's an old woman now, but she's still working and she's still making art. And she's lived in many different places, mostly New York City, but now she lives up in Santa Fe, here in New Mexico. And here's an example of one of her paintings. And here's another one. And here's another one. And, you know, they look kind of simple when you first look at them. It looks like, it's just like a few gray bands or a few just like 3 or 4 different bands on the page. What's so amazing about that? Well, what's amazing is when you look closely, when you take one of her pieces and you look closely, yes, look at that. It's all made out of teeny, teeny, tiny lines. Yeah, lines. All the gray tones on her paintings are filled with these little bitty tiny lines. I have seen some of her work in an art gallery up in Santa Fe, and it's crazy to look at because you just can't help but think, oh my gosh, how long did this take her? Most of them are quite a bit bigger than this background that I'm sitting in front of. And she's just making these tiny little lines over and over and over. I always think, what if she messes up? What if she messes up one of those lines? Does she start over? Does she have a way to erase it? Does it look bad if she erases it? It's crazy how much time she spends on these. So you're going to get to try this today, to just try to see if you can also make a piece that's made out of just tiny, tiny lines. And the kind of what you're going for is when you're far away from your piece, you want it to look not like a bunch of tiny lines, but like maybe just like a stripe. But when you get close to your piece, you realize, oh my gosh, it's made up of tiny little lines. And so you're really going to have to make the lines just about as close together as you can possibly imagine making them. And I'm going to give you 2 pieces of paper for this, 2 different sizes to choose from. One's really small, so if you want to just try it on a quarter sheet of paper, so it's not going to take you forever to finish something. You can try it on a quarter sheet of paper. And then if you want to move up and try it on a half sheet of paper, you can do that and try it on a half sheet of paper. It's going to take a while. You're going to have to be very patient. As soon as you start rushing, your lines aren't going to look the same anymore. They're going to look sloppy. And it's going to make it so when you stand far away from your piece, it's not going to have that look of all those lines kind of blending together to make one bigger line. And here's one I made. Here's what it looks like from far away. And here's what it looks like close up. And here's another example, another one I did with a couple of lines on it. And here's what it looks like from far away. And here's what it looks like close up. Yeah, so you can really see how much time this takes. So this is what we're doing today. We're honoring the artist Max Cole, a New Mexico artist, by trying to make some work that's like her. We're using pencils for this one because I think pencils are the only thing we can get sharp enough so you can really get those tiny little lines. We're not using markers or crayons because it would be so hard. I think she actually uses a paintbrush. I don't know how she does that. How she gets, it must be a very tiny paintbrush to get all those tiny, tiny lines. To me, it looks more like she's using an ink pen. But maybe she's using a paintbrush. I sure couldn't do that with a paintbrush, but I can do it with a pencil. So that's what I did. All right, so I look forward to seeing the work that you guys do. Remember to take your time, be patient with it. If it doesn't work out, get a new piece of paper, start again. If you finish one, get another piece of paper, try to do kind of a different looking one. See what you can do with this and with the ideas of Max Cole. All right, see you later.